Welcome to Vets Chatting with Granny Lisa Comedy Bit. Today, we're interviewing Big Al Gonzales, who is an Austin-based comedian, actor, and Marine Corps veteran. His conversational style and dynamic stage presence captivates audiences around the world. Big Al has been featured on Texas Public Radio's Worth Repeating, Idiotest on GSN, Pandora Radio, Spike TV's Auction Hunters, and seen in the movie False Colors. He has also been a part of SF's Sketch Fest, Santa Cruz Comedy Festival, San Diego Comedy Festival, SF Comedy Day, Big Little Comedy Fest, SF Theater Fest, and Director of Comedy for Austin Veteran Arts Festival. He won Funniest in South Texas and was a finalist for Funniest in Texas in 2018. His SF-based improv troupe, Big City Improv, won Best of the Day, Bay 2002. And he was nominated for an Irene Bryan Award for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical. His work in VR with Bell Render Comedy has landed him in the Washington Post, ABC News Vegas, Cracked, CNET, Forbes, WSJ, Der Spiegel, and Variety Magazine. Currently on the Friendly Fire comedy tour with social media influencer Drew Hernandez, Big Al also toured with Steve Trevino for several years and is credited on 2 of his latest episodes. Let's get Granny and Big Al in here and see how they're doing today. Hey guys, how's it going?
Thank you.
What's going on?
Wow. Big Al, that is quite a list that we heard on your accomplishments. And I apologize, my little dog here. If I put him in his little cage, he'll bark. So I'm going to sit here and just bribe him to be quiet for a few seconds. But I am excited because I know we're in the same group on Facebook.
Right, the Misfits.
Yes, the Misfits. And can
I ask you a question?
Yes.
Great. So I just got added on there from a friend, Brendan. From Brendan, I believe, and he's out here in Texas. And I have no idea what the group was for or what it's about exactly. He just told me to join it, and I did. And obviously, that's how we met each other. But could you tell me more about the Misfits? I mean, is there people who don't know what the Misfits group is?
Well, the Misfits group is a bunch of people, veterans, and veterans' families. They do the common thread of cannabis. And so what they do is focus in on growing your own cannabis, and they get right into the details of it all. And
got it. Just wanted because I wasn't 100%. He didn't explain it to me. And I said, sure, I'll join. So being from California, now I understand. And I'm no stranger to this.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm in Texas too. I just moved here. And
awesome.
I'm in
Montgomery, Texas. Awesome. Well, I'm based out of here in between San Antonio and Austin. So most people don't know what the little cities are. So I just say Austin. But I'm right. I'm not too far from there. And I've been out here for about 8 years. I moved here from Los Angeles. I was living in Los Angeles doing comedy out there, and I moved to San Antonio originally, and then now I'm living closer to Austin, and it's been a fun journey.
Well, it looks like it because I went and like I said, when I saw your show marking on the marquee that you put in the group, I was like, we have a comedian in our group. Oh my gosh, because we have changed our whole style of our podcast. You remember Johnny Carson, right?
I do. I remember Johnny well.
Awesome, because that's what we were trying to do with our show.
Okay.
We all are veterans, and we all know what the issues are. But we're trying to bring some positivity into it, give some answers to questions, but also have a good time together.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great, Granny.
I wanted to have a comedian because you guys are funny.
Well, that's the whole point of doing comedy. So if I'm not, I probably should quit.
Exactly. So, you were in the Marines?
Yes, I was in the Marine Corps Reserves. I went in during the Gulf War. I joined when that was still going on, and it changed very shortly after getting out of boot camp. And so I opted to go reserve because my job wasn't needed at that moment. So I opted to do they call engineer. So I was
Oh,
a red patcher. So I don't know if you're familiar with what a red patcher is. So in the
no.
Marine Corps, there's only one unit in the entire Marine Corps that's allowed to modify their uniform. I don't know if anybody knows that, but with the Marine Corps, we're all the same. We all wear the same uniform. There's no
Mhm.
specialness. We're all riflemen at the end of the day. So, but our unit, we're called. I was with First Beach and Port, and we had a distinctive red patch right about here on our covers, and then a red patch on the left and right side of our knees. So, which apparently is necessary during combat when we're setting up the when we do shore party and when we set up all the MOMAT and all the flags, so that everybody knows where all the supplies are, where to get them, and where to drop them
Oh,
off. So that's kind of what we do. That's what we do, and we did a lot of the the helo drops and the helo pickups. We also did the loading and unloading of all the ships, and then we also did loading and unloading of all the birds. And so I guess they needed a distinctive mark to let everybody know who's in charge of shore party. So we have the little red patches, which I thought was kind of funny. When you look back at it, I mean, we're supposed to be the first ones in during a situation, right? We set up all the supply chain, and we've given the enemy a nice big red target.
Yeah.
I'm like, who thought of that?
yeah, that's kind where's the right there? That's who we take
How
out
many
first.
times do you fall and have to double check yourself to make sure you weren't bleeding?
No times, but it was just funny. I think they told us our life expectancy was very low in a combat situation. We're just like, well, maybe we didn't pick the right one.
Right. And well, especially when you have the challenge of, we'll take them out in the knees first and then,
Right.
straight in the
It,
head.
I have a bit about just the idea of just having walking around in a combat zone with a red patch on your forehead and on your knees, and some general came up with that idea and thought it was the best thing.
Oh,
So.
yeah, it had to be. I mean, no enlisted guy would do it. Make myself more, of a
But it
target
was,
than.
I mean, basically, we were the UPS of the Marine Corps. If it absolutely positively had to be there within 3 days, that was our job. We would get it there.
Wow. Okay. That's kind of intense, actually. I mean,
So
there had to have been a lot of stress with that.
yeah, well, it wasn't an easy job. I mean, it was definitely work. I mean, we did a lot of work. I mean, loading things onto trains, loading things off of trains. That was probably the most strenuous. Was loading and unloading off of trains, because we had to do a lot of the ratcheting of the chains to lock down the vehicles that we put on the rail cars. So
Right.
strenuously, that was probably the hardest thing that I did. The most dangerous thing we did was the helo drops and the helo lifts, because as you know, helicopters generate lots of static electricity, 20,000, 200,000 volts, or was it 20,000 volts? Either way, that's a lot of volts.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's generating there. And when they come down, they drop a what do you call it? It's a metal rod that's hanging from the bird, and then what we do is we take it with our rubber gloves, and then we smash it into the ground so that it diffuses the static electricity. So if you don't do that, you're going to get a big wake up call, and accidents happen. Accidents
Mhm.
happen. I mean, there was a sergeant in our unit who had his toes blown out because they didn't properly ground
Oh,
it.
Oh,
Oof.
wow.
Yeah.
oh, that's
He didn't lose any. He just got them. They were really burnt. We had a corporal in our unit who was a really small gentleman. I think he was just barely made it over 5'2", and he was a tiny gentleman. And I think his name was Corporal Fung. And whenever the downwind from the helos would, it would just, I mean, it's a heavy wind coming down on you,
right.
and so we have to take a stance so that we can settle into the earth so that we can guide in, because we're out there guiding. We're doing all this, guiding the helo in and out. And so he was such a small guy, and he wasn't very big. So when that downwind would come, sometimes they'd have to have somebody behind him to hold him down because he would lift and fly back. So, but yeah, that was probably the most
Oh,
dangerous. That was probably the most dangerous job. Then you got to worry about once you put the load on, when they lift, you got to get the hell out of there. Otherwise, you can get smashed by a load. So that's probably the most dangerous one. But like I
mm-mm.
said, it was fun though because we did a lot of night drops and a lot of night lifts. So we were using glow sticks like we were at a rave.
So you know all those little moves that they do at the airport, those kinds of things.
Yep.
Awesome. Now, what were you? Did you grow up being funny? Was this like a dream to become a comedian? I mean, how do you guys decide to be a comedian?
Well, it's just like anything in life. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You know what I mean? There's no same. Not everybody has the same journey. You know what I mean? For
Mhm.
me, I wasn't born funny. I was born imaginative. That was what I was given. I was given an imagination, and I used to do a lot of my own radio plays. I would talk into my recorder, and I do a lot of sketches. I would play all the different characters, and that was kind of my thing because I grew up listening to the radio a lot growing when I was younger, and I used to listen to all the radio shows, and I used to listen to a show called Dr. Demento. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Demento, but he was a comedy radio DJ, and he would play all the funny songs from the time and earlier and such. He used to play a lot of Weird Al and other artists that were funny, and I used to listen to the sketches that they would do and some of the funny songs, and it would crack me up. And so I would try to recreate it or do my own version of it. And that's how I kind of got into comedy. And then eventually, when I started going to school, high school and college, I started learning how to write, and I became a writer. And I wrote some one acts, I wrote some sketches and such. And then eventually, I started doing improv. And then from improv, I decided to get into comedy, stand up comedy. And I had to learn how to write for myself, like a specific act. And that was harder than I thought, but I did it. And here I am almost 20 years later. I'm still doing it.
Oh, so that's kind of cool. So when you were in the military, did you entertain your fellow soldiers and stuff, and when they were down and needed a pickup, you would just like automatically turn on, or
Well, it's an act for me. For some comics, they're on all the time. I mean, those people in your unit or in your family or in your friend circle. They're always on. They're always joking. They're always like cracking everybody up. I'm not that person. I'm the
ah,
I'm the person who writes it down very specifically, and then when I get on stage, then I'm that person.
ah,
So for me, it's completely an act on stage, but it comes from me, so it's not like it's make believe.
right,
It's just it's a version of myself that I put on stage. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's not disingenuine. It's just that part of me that I don't always get to be in real life, and I get to do it on stage. And so I allow for myself to be funny on stage when necessary. And then when I'm not on stage, I'm pretty much a regular average person. You know what I mean? I'm not cracking jokes every minute. For me, like when I was in the Corps, I was more of a, how do you say, I was more witty and more of a smart ass, if anything. I mean, I would always be the one who would just, I would hear that one thing and it would give me the opportunity to just jump in and say something snarky or smart ass. And I used to get in a lot of trouble because I would find my opportunity and then I would make them laugh with just a phrase or a word or you know just tag
right,
tag something somebody would say. But there was other guys who were way much funnier than me. But I would jump in when they were being funny and I would just tag their humor, and then we'd have everybody cracking up. So I'm a good side. What do you call it? A side guy, shotgun. I write
oh,
shotgun comedy.
oh, shotgun, okay. Well, I just think this is so fascinating because, you watch a lot of comedians, and I'm trying to think of, oh, he played on Carol Burnett's show. He is one of my favorite ones. not Corman, but the other guy, the little guy.
Yeah.
You know, he would do the elephant one, you know.
Yeah, I forgot his name, but I know he did
Yeah.
all those videos. Dorf on golf, Dorf on this.
Yeah. Yep. But he was not one of those ones that was on all the time. He was
No,
very specific, and only if he had a sidekick would he be able to do off the collar.
right.
But otherwise, he had a very strict, you know,
Tim Conway. His name was Tim
Tim
Conway.
Conway. That's it. Yes. Yep. And so I never
Yeah,
realized
him and
that.
Harvey Korman, they worked very well off each other. So Corman would play the straight man, and then Tim would just have everybody cracking up.
Yeah, they were. I just loved that show. So I know I may be asking very boring questions, but when you came back from service, and did you have a hard time getting back into civilian life, or was
I,
it?
So for me, I grew up in a military family. My father was in the Marine Corps, so I was second generation Marine. My father was in Vietnam, and I grew up dealing with my father having his PTSD and his issues. Coming back from Vietnam, and so that was something that's kind of affected my journey into comedy because my father was a very serious man and he was dealing with his issue, his mental health issues, being a Vietnam vet. And so part of the thing was, and this is where comedy came in. I wasn't the crack up, but me and my brothers, we knew that if my father was in a bad mood, it wasn't going to be fun for us. So we did all
Right.
our best to keep the levity, going inside the house. We had to make sure that he was happy and make sure that he was laughing. So we would try to be as funny as we could just to keep our dad laughing, because when he was laughing, then that meant he was going to be in a good mood. So, making him laugh was really important. When we would go to my grandfather's house, who was also a veteran, he was in World War II. He was there in Normandy when they dropped, and then he did a second tour over in the South Pacific. So he saw a lot of combat, my grandfather. He never talked about it, but that shaped his life. And my grandfather was a very funny gentleman. He was a guy who was always on. Everything was always funny and always a joke for him. And when I got older and I got out of the military, I asked him some questions regarding that. And I said, how did you deal with it? And he said, well, I started to look at life differently. He goes, when you've been that close to death, on a day-to-day basis, he said, and you survive and you see all that horror, he goes, life isn't as serious as some people make it out to be. You should just enjoy it, live, laugh, love. It sounds cliche, but that's how he lived his life. It was live, laugh, love. And every chance he could, he would just have everybody laughing because he loved making people laugh, because it was so much better than being sad or angry or anything. So I rarely ever saw my grandfather get angry or be just stern. He was always the levity in the family. As a matter of fact, so much to the point where sometimes everybody else would get in trouble from our grandmother because he would have us laughing so hard it would make my grandmother upset.
I can hear it in the background.
But we learned a lot of humor from my grandfather, and he would have us laugh, and we would take that. And like I said, we would use it for my father, who was dealing with his mental health issues. And then eventually when I got into the military, it took some transition, because, they, in the Marine Corps, they train you to be, a rifleman. Your job is to kill. Your job is to be, alert, 100% alert on the job, and you get that 1,000-yard stare in your face, and that's intense for people when you come back home. You come home, you're just like staring out. You know what I mean? You got that look on your face. Every soldier has that on their face. Every Marine, anybody who's been in, they got that look on their face, and you come back, and what are you doing? Every time you go to a restaurant, you have to sit in a very specific space. You're always looking around. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's
Mhm.
something that they trained us to. So
Right.
it takes right. You're always you always look like a tweaker, right? You're just like
Yeah.
Exactly. That's so
looking
true.
around for the exits, trying to sizing up everybody in the restaurant or the bar. You know, I can take that guy. I can definitely take that guy. So, you know,
Yeah,
it
that's
takes
so
it
true.
right, Granny. It takes a while to get out of that mindset. And like when I came back home and I reintroduced myself to some of my friends that I left, you know, when I went in, they didn't recognize me. I was intense to them, and I didn't think I was, but apparently we some of us are, and I can't speak for every person that's been in the military. I mean, there's some guys, you know, who are just like, shit, you were in the military? You're like the most chill ass, you know, relaxed dude I know. And it's just like, yeah, that's just how I am. And I'm pretty much chill, but like I said, I had an intensity that I didn't have going in, and that was something that took a lot for my friends to get used to. And I lost some friends because they couldn't handle it. I
Mhm.
also lost some friends because I grew up in Northern California, where you know, a lot of hippie mindset, a lot of anti-war mindset, and
Right.
they they refused to be friends with me after I joined for their own, you know, personal reasons. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Their political reasons, their political leanings, and so I lost friends, and that was something that I had to deal with as well. And I just rolled with it. You know, I didn't change so much as I just got hyper focused and more you know, more physically fit, more hyper focused, more you know, I had a I had a mindset that was a little bit different. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I was
makes
looking
sense.
out for friends. I was looking out for family. You know, everywhere I went, I was, you know, I was always on guard, making sure if something happened, I was going to take care of it.
And you knew exactly how you were going to do
Exactly.
it.
That's kind of the funny thing, right? It's just like
Yeah.
we all think we're going to be the, you know, the save a day guy, and then sometimes when the stuff actually happens, you're like, well, I'm ill prepared for this.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what's weird because until now, I always thought it was something normal that everybody did this. But
Right.
no, it's not a normal thing. It's a military thing.
Oh yeah, and the cool thing, like, so when I was going to college, there was a lot of veterans that had came back from the Gulf. So there's a lot of people who were taking advantage of their, you know, of the college money
Right.
that we get when we join. And so I went to college, and there was a lot of veterans there. And I used to hang out in the Able Disabled Club there in college, and it's one of the largest organizations on campus. And you know, there's naturally born disabled people, and then there's the veterans who came back who lost limbs or have, you know, mental issues, and they have to go to the Able Disabled Club in order to facilitate some of the payments and such. So they got to go there for classes and you know, to check in and such. So I met a lot of veterans in the Able Disabled Club, which was cool because when I was in college, I ran for student body president,
Oh,
and it was all those people in the Able Disabled Club, which was one of the largest organizations on campus. They put me over, and I ended up winning student body president when I was in college, and a lot of that had to do with a lot of the vets that were in that organization.
wow.
So it was
I
kind of
didn't
like
know.
yeah, I made it my thing. I would go there, and I would talk to people, and I would treat everybody like a regular person, you know. And there would be people without limbs, and people with mental disabilities, people in wheelchairs and such. And I would talk to them just like regular people, you know. Everybody else was like, I don't want to say talking down, but they were patronizing. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? There's this thing where people who aren't disabled, or people who don't have mental you know, disabilities, or aren't in wheelchairs,
Right.
they'll talk to you in a way like you're a child, or like you're sent like they're
Like your
overly
thumb.
sensitive and patronizing, and you're just like, ugh, it's gross, right? Just talk to me like a regular person. So I would
Yeah.
go in, and like I didn't hold back. Like I, I would I would make jokes at their expense, and they would laugh because nobody talked to them like that. I go, come on, hop along, let's get over here. I said, roll your ass over here. We got to get the food. And I would say stuff like that, and I didn't mind. I go, is it me or are you crazy? I would,
Yeah.
I would just say witty stuff like that. And it was fun to me because if you really like people, that's how you talk to people.
But
Like,
that's what you did in the military, though,
right.
right?
That's how we talk to each other in the military. And that's how we talk to each other as a Mexican family. When people think, a thing people don't know about the Latino culture is,
Uh-huh.
if we love you, we talk so much crap to your face.
Yes, yes.
And we come up with silly names for you and everything, and that's just part of that's part of the Mexican culture. Like like if you're bald, they'll call you pelon. What does that mean? It means you got hair. You're hairy. Which, right? If you're skinny, they call you flaco. If you're fat, they call you gordo. If you are, they would give you little nicknames, and that's just the way it is. And so, you're used to that culture, coming from a Mexican family and then going into the military where people are just the same way. And like they used to call me Private Paul Rodriguez because I always would like make a smart ass funny remark. And so, that was my nickname. They'd call me Paul Rodriguez.
So, on this journey for 20 years, what is your favorite part of being a comedian, especially for our veterans? Because you give so much of yourself, but obviously you got to get something back. So what is that?
So here's the deal. So I got to be complete honesty here. I never leaned into my military service when I'm on stage. That was never a thing because when I started doing comedy, I'd been out for a while. So like I was so far removed from it, like it wasn't a part of my life, in my head. And so when I started comedy, I didn't talk about being in the military. It wasn't something I leaned on. And it wasn't until last year, until I moved to Texas, really. But it really kicked in last year when I got invited to tour overseas in Japan and Korea. And so a friend of mine said, "Hey, you're in the Marine Corps." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "We're going to do a tour of some Marine Corps bases, and we wanted to have somebody who was in the Marine Corps be on the show. And I thought of you, and you're a really good host." He says, "I'd love to have you on the show." I said, "Oh yeah, totally. I would love to do that." And so he signed me up. I went through all the paperwork, and then we went to Okinawa, and we did a tour of the Marine Corps bases in Okinawa. Then we went to Tokyo, and then we did I think, where did we do? Mount Fuji out there, and then from there we went to Pohang over in Korea, and then we did Camp Mujak, and we did several shows where we entertained the Marines, and it was so fun. Like I had so much fun because I knew their experience, and I was able to just riff and have fun and talk trash, and I did some of my jokes, but mostly it was just connecting to them on that level that they probably weren't connected to with the other guys that were on the show, because none of them were in the service. I was the only one. And so I had had a lot of fun with that. And the people in charge, they got my information. They're like, "Hey, we'd love to have you come back." And I said, "I'd love to do this again." And then people saw that I did that. And then I started getting calls from other people. And they were like, "Hey, can you do this military show? Can you do this military show?" And then I got a phone call from this guy named Drew Hernandez, a combat veteran, who's been doing comedy videos on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook for the last 8-9 years. And he'd amassed a following. He decided he wanted to do a comedy tour in Texas. And I was recommended to him, and I gave him a call. And it turned out another gentleman who lives in my area also talked to him. And he chose us to go on tour with him in Texas. And we did several cities out here, from El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. And recently we just did Louisiana just the other week.
Oh.
And this guy is great. Like, he understands comedy, and because he's a combat veteran, he's been making these videos for a long time. So he's been in that mindset of creating humor for veterans. And so this was something that I never experienced. And so through these experiences, I started to remember, what it was like. And I started thinking about, how do we laugh? What's our humor mindset? And I realized we're a bunch of degenerates. We're like the group, we're a bunch of misfits.
Yes.
Like, our sense of humor is dark, edgy. Like
Yeah.
we don't hold back on anything because, as you know, many veterans have seen things that are horrible, and in order to get through that trauma, we have to sometimes laugh at some dark ass shit in order to fucking get through the day. And so it was different to have to think like that, and remember, yeah, we're dark sons of, yeah, we're crazy.
Yeah.
We're crazy when it comes to our humor. Like we
It
go
is.
there, we go there, we go to those dark places.
Well,
And
because you go there.
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
We experience it. And the only way to keep going is to add humor to it so that you can see the lighter side of life.
right. And again, like I said, I didn't see combat because it ended by the time I was going through my school and such. So it's like I didn't have that. I had a mindset of a trained Marine, but I didn't have a combat veteran mindset. So it's like I I I had to kind of like get reacquainted to that, and I was like, oh, okay. And I remembered my father. I remember my grandfather, both who had seen combat. And I remember what made them laugh. I remember watching them watch TV and listen to conversations and what made them laugh. And so, being able to draw from that and draw from listening to my new friend Drew talk about his experience, I was like, oh, okay. And it helped me. And I started doing more military themed shows. People started contacting me, and it's been my thing now. Now I'm going into 2024, and again, I'm doing more military shows than I've done before, and I'm connecting in a way that I didn't know I could, and I'm having fun with it. And now I'm leaning into it because it's a necessity. Veterans need to laugh. Veterans need to let it out. They need to go to a show, and they need to have fun and remember it's okay to laugh.
Exactly. And that's what's pretty cool, I think, about it is that you have that unique insight. And so when you hear the stories or uh, the comments back to you, what has been the most touching?
I got to work with a couple guys. One of them's name was Bobby Henline, who was blown up during combat. So he has burns all over his body. He's missing, eyelids and in his ears and his fingers and stuff. And to hear his story when I worked with him, and to see that he's able to laugh at himself, it's just like it's more than inspirational. It's like, wow, here's a guy who's had it pretty bad, right? And you look at your own life and you're like, and I'm bitching about this little thing, and this guy's out there on stage making people laugh at his own expense, and I'm like, and it reminds me of like when Richard Pryor, when he burned himself from doing, I think, smoking crack. I think he was.
Right.
You remember the story? Richard Pryor burned himself, and he was running down the street,
Yes.
And then I remember his special, where the first thing he did was like he addressed it. Then he took out a match, and he goes, "I heard some of the jokes you guys did," and he lit a match, and he goes, "What's this?" Richard Pryor running down the street.
Well, because
And that's what comedy is. Comedy is going to those dark places and remembering some traumatic, events, and being able to look back at it and go, okay, it wasn't funny when it happened, but now I can look back and go, you know what? That was actually pretty funny. It was pretty ridiculous. I'll never experience anything like that again. And I lived through it. I survived, and it's okay to laugh.
that's awesome. So what is so you're kind of more back into the dark humor of military. How do you prepare for that? Because it's kind of like do you have to go by, like you said, the memories of your dad and grandpa? And
Yeah, I tell stories. I incorporate stories and just some of my own jokes and some of my own humor. I'm not a dark comic, but I have shared experiences with other humans, so I'm able to relate. Comedy is all about relating, and having grown up with with a Vietnam vet and World War II vet, I have their shared experience. Like I've heard so many different stories. I always remember one story. I actually wrote it in the newspaper when I was in college, when I was on the newspaper staff. I remember my dad telling this story about they were in Vietnam, and the word was getting spread that they were going to get chicken, and so everybody was excited, right? Because you think chicken, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? Fried chicken. Everybody's thinking fried chicken, right? So when they heard, oh yeah, we're getting chicken, everybody's thinking we're getting fried chicken. Everybody's all excited. And then they do the drops and they drop the crates, and they go and they open them and they look inside and it's raw chicken on ice. They got raw chicken on ice. And everybody's out, you're out in Vietnam, you're out in the field. You can't just barbecue, otherwise
Right.
you're going to give away your locations. Everybody's just, they're like, well, what are we going to do with this? It's like, this is no good. This is raw chicken. And so like they passed them out. Everybody got a chicken and, they were supposed to do something with it. And people were just like, yeah, I don't want this. And my dad and a couple of his boys from Texas, they grew up barbecuing and they grew up knowing how to do it so that nobody can see you. They learned how to build, they grew up in a time when you would dig a pit in the ground and, throw some rocks and put some leaves and you'd put the meat on top and cover it up with leaves. And then you would recover it with all the dirt and then you'd let it cook inside. And that's the way they learned how to cook. So when everybody was like, we don't want our chickens, they said, okay, we'll take them. So my dad and his friends from Texas started taking everybody's chickens. And then everybody's like, well, what are you guys going to do with it? Don't you mind? You didn't want them. So it's not your fucking business. Excuse my language. And so they dug a pit. They put all the chickens inside. And after a while, everybody's like, hey, what's that smell? And it's like, well, it's the chickens. The chickens are cooking. And so all of a sudden, everybody wanted their chickens back. Everybody was getting angry. And so then my dad and his friends, they just did trade outs. They go, you want your chicken? Then you're going to have to trade. So they started doing trade outs and then they sold their chickens back. And I just remember him telling the story and they're laughing. Him and his buddies, they're laughing and having a good time talking about this story. And so it just made me think about, that old saying, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade. Or in my dad's case, when life hands you raw chicken, you dig a hole and you cook it.
Yeah, you go.
You take a bad situation and you make it work for you.
Right.
That reminds me of that joke my dad used to say, Granny, all the time. My daddy used to always say, you can want in one hand and shit in the other and wait and see which one comes first. And I added to it and I said, or you can throw your hands together and end up with a shitty prayer. It's up to you what you choose.
Exactly. So again, it's just the great thing about veterans is we're able to, not all of us, but there's a bunch of us who know how to just look at the situation and go, hey, it could be worse. Just enjoy the moment. And I learned that from my dad. I learned that from my grandfather. My grandfather, when he passed away recently, he lived almost to 100 and he never told us a lot of his stories. And I found out a story about him, which was like, wow, like it was pretty intense. Like number one, my grandfather grew up in Texas. He grew up in Pearsall, Texas, and he was a rancher. They were cowboys. Mm-hmm. And living out here at the time when he was growing up, they only spoke Spanish because there was no necessity for it because they worked on a ranch 24/7. They lived there, worked there. That's what they did. So everybody he worked around was family and friends and they all spoke Spanish. So that's all they ever spoke. He didn't speak English. Wasn't a language he spoke. Then he was, he got drafted, right, for the army and he went in and he didn't, him and a lot of other Mexicans, they didn't know how to speak English, but they had to go fight this war overseas. And so one of the things I found out about him was he learned English overseas fighting in World War II.
Wow. I can just imagine some of the phrases that he learned.
Yeah. So he learned from listening to American music. He learned from, listening to the other soldiers and he got a fast track, when your life depends on language, you learn it quick. And so, there was obviously interpreters there who would help, interpret things, but, he learned on the job. And, after they stormed the beaches on Normandy, on D-Day, he made it up to the top, and there's some photos of him pulling down a Nazi flag. There's a photo of him removing the Luger from a Nazi officer. Like, my grandfather fought Nazis, actual Nazis. And that's crazy. I didn't, I knew he was in the war, but I didn't know exactly the extent of it. And,
Right.
Because of what had happened, he was automatically, what they do is sometimes, like, you go in a private, and by the time the first battle's over, you're a sergeant.
Right.
And that's what happened
Unfortunately.
right. And that's what happened to my grandfather. So he was in charge of a unit, he was in charge of a platoon up there. And so their job was, once they got there, they had to get to this certain place in France. And one of the other stories I found out was my grandfather was in charge of the platoon, and they had to take a bunch of German prisoners. And because of the Geneva Convention, they had to take care of them. They had to feed them. They had to make sure that they were treated according to the Geneva Convention. Well, while they're marching towards this place in France, he realizes they don't have enough supplies to take care of them and take care of themselves. So the story goes, they went to the edge of a cliff along the ocean side, along the ocean, right? And they marched all the German soldiers up there, and my grandfather just threw in two interpreters, because he had to talk to somebody who was Spanish, who understood Spanish, and then that person had to talk to somebody who understood German. So they talked to a guy who spoke Spanish and English. Then that guy would translate it from Spanish to English to the guy who understood German, and then that guy would have to translate it from English to German and talk to the Germans. So by the time I got to the German guy, basically he told these guys what my grandfather said, which was, hey, look, we don't have enough supplies, and the Geneva Convention says we have to take care of you, and that's what I'll do. He says, but if we do that, none of us are going to make it. We're all going to die. We're all going to starve. He said, so I'm going to give you another option. He says, because we can't take on this burden. He goes, I'm going to give you an option. He says, you can jump off the cliff, and if you live, then that is God's will, and I will let you go. He says, but if you die amongst the rocks, he said, that was also God's will, and that is your fate. And he says, it's your choice. And so all the German soldiers looked at each other, and they said, well, it's better than dying. At least we have a half a chance. So they all jumped off. And then my grandfather moved on, and they went to France, and they had extra supplies, and they shared them with the French that they helped liberate over there.
Wow. And how old was he?
Oh, he was probably in his early 20s.
I mean, can you just imagine that? I mean, to make that kind of decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's intense. Like, you think about that, we don't think about all the things they had to go through, and just hearing that story, and how he was very judicious about it. He gave them the option, and his faith, his culture, it all came into play. He believed in God, and he was a very spiritual, religious man, and in his head he goes, if it, like, literally what he told them, if it's God's will that you survive, then so be it. And he told him, he says, I will not come after you. I will not shoot you once you get down there. He goes, but if you die while you're jumping, I can't change that. That's God's will.
Right.
Well, it's kind of weird because my dad, he went in, he lied about his age at 16.
So did mine.
And so he was in the Navy, and he would drive the soldiers on those boats that I can't remember that drop the bottoms down, so that they could come out. And but he never ever, rarely spoke about what happened during the war.
Right.
But he got shot twice on his way back to the ship to get more soldiers to bring to the beach.
Right.
And and that's the only thing I know about that. And then he also was there after Hiroshima, or however you say that.
Hiroshima, right.
Yeah. And so those are the only two things I know, because he was very, very private. very private about it.
Yeah, it's their, it's like some of the fellows and ladies that we serve with, you know, nowadays, like not everybody wants to talk about their journey. And that's where people like me and Drew and my friend Raul and another gentleman I know out here, Justin Governale, we're all veterans, and we use our experience to make other veterans laugh, because there are some who aren't able to share their experience, who aren't ready to tell their story, and
Right.
they hear us on stage and they see us making light of things, and it lets them release. And so sometimes we'll get people come up and they'll share their stories with us, and at that point it's not about me. So when I'm standing there ready to meet and greet and take pictures and sell merchandise and such, it's not about me anymore. Once that veteran comes up to me and shares a story, at that point I stop everything and I give them 100% of my attention, and I listen. I pay attention and I listen and I let them tell their story, because for all I know, that is the first time they're telling that story, and I'm not going to stop them. I'm going to let them get it out. And that's that's the new journey I have, is listening to veterans and let them talk and let them get their story out, because everybody has a story, and everybody has a journey they went through. And if my humor, if my comedy, if the jokes I tell allow somebody to release and tell their story, then I've accomplished my job as a comic.
That is so cool. Now, what do you have anything that you could share, like some comedic stories for us, and for the audience that will be listening, and
Well, they can go and find my video. It's on I have a video on YouTube. It's my half-hour comedy special. I recorded it here in San Antonio, and I have that on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, Big Al Gonzales, you'll find my half-hour comedy special. Also, I have the same comedy special on audio on Amazon, and it's also on Pandora. So if you look up Big Al Gonzales, you'll find my comedy special on Pandora and on Amazon as well, or you can listen to it in your car or your office. And it's relatively clean. I don't use a lot of vulgarity, so you don't have to worry about that so much. It's not 100%, but it's, I'd say about 90% clean. So you can listen to it around other people.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you. Because I'm sure that people are very curious to know who you are, what you're about, and, see, what your jokes are about and everything like that.
I'll tell you one story. It's not on tape anywhere, but it's I always remember my first day when I got to boot camp. Somebody told me before I got there. They go, "Hey man," they go, "make sure you drink enough water." I said, "Why's that?" They go, "Because when you get there, they're gonna make you urinate into a cup, for drug testing and such. And if you don't pee, they're gonna make your life hard, and they're gonna humiliate you, and they're gonna, with your." You're going to be standing there naked, and they're going to be yelling at you. And it's like, in my head, that was the last thing I wanted. So I drank a lot of water before we got on the bus, and I drank a lot of drinks before I got on the plane. So I got on the bus, it took me to the plane. Then on the plane, I drank some water and some drinks, and then we got off the plane. Then I got on another shuttle that took us to San Diego, and so I drank all these liquids.
Oh my goodness.
As we get off to go step on the yellow footprints there at MCRD, I already got to go to the bathroom pretty bad. And I'm thinking we're going to go like real soon, right? Like we're going to have an opportunity. No, they just start yelling at us and funneling us through the base. And we're picking up supplies. We're getting our hair cut. We're getting our uniforms. We're being yelled at again. We're getting shots. We're getting this is like the whole rigmarole of coming in, first entry day. And I'm like, when are we going to use the restroom? When are we going to do the drug test? They're like, shut up, keep moving. And I'm like, it's getting worse. Like I have to really go bad. And it turns out they never had us pee in a cup the whole time.
The whole time?
No, we didn't do any of that. And I don't know for what reason or why, but I guess because we came in really late. And so they pushed us through, and I'm sitting there, I got to go bad. And so finally we get to a point where they take us to the barracks where we're going to sleep for that night. And they march us in, and we're all standing there, and we're all at attention, and they're yelling at us, and they're telling us to put our stuff here and our stuff there. And I'm like dying. I'm ready to explode. The guy next to me, I remember his name was Gallagher. He turned and he looked at me. He goes, "Oh my God." I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "You're green." I said, "What do you mean I'm green?" He goes, "You're green." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "What's the matter?" I go, like, "Dude, I got to go to the bathroom. I have had to go to the bathroom for the last couple hours." And he goes, "Dude," he says, "Well, you better go soon." And I'm like, "Well, I can't. They're yelling at us." And so I'm standing there, and I got to go real bad. And thankfully, I'm wearing clothes so I can hold it in. Then they tell us we got to get naked. And I'm like, "Oh, crap." So we had to take off all our clothes. Now we're standing there completely naked. I'm trying so hard not to do the pee-pee dance, and I'm holding it in as hard as I can. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm going to piss right here in the barracks, and I'm going to be known as Piss Boy for the rest of my time here." And I'm like so freaking out. And my buddy's freaking out because I'm turning green. And so I'm literally right at the edge. I'm ready to pee right all over the barracks. And all of a sudden, the drill sergeant goes, the drill instructor goes, "All right, gentlemen, you have 5 minutes to shit, shower, and shave. Get going." And I was like, "Oh, yes." And I knew the bathroom, the head was right behind me. So I turned around and I just marched right in. The minute I crossed the threshold, I just started peeing. I peed on the floor from the minute I walked through all the way to the shower. I went to the shower. I showered. I'm peeing in the shower. I get out of the shower. I go to the urinal. I pee in the urinal until I'm completely exhausted of urine in my body. I peed for the entire 5 minutes. Even when I was shaving and brushing my teeth, I was still urinating.
Damn.
For 5 whole minutes, I urinated because I was holding it in for that long.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
Oh, that's funny. That's terrible. I never got.
The great thing was I was never known as P-Boy.
Oh, that's the main thing. You would have been tagged that too. You would have been. Oh my gosh. But why did they strip you naked?
That's just because they wanted us to shower.
They did us too in the Air Force, Granny. Did they not do that to y'all in the Army?
No. No. I mean, we had to get naked, of course, but we didn't have to stand in the barracks and get naked.
Yeah, well, it's different.
It's different now, Granny.
We don't have mixed. Ours is it's all men, all women in a unit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I was in the
separate.
first mixed basic where the men and women were together. I was the first one in South Carolina, Fort Jackson. And so there was a lot of baby boys. Baby boys. Yeah.
I also remember when they told us when they did the verdict for what was it? It was for what's his name? The guy who got beat by the cops.
Which one?
That's what I was going to say.
No, it was in the 90s. It was in the early 90s.
Oh, King?
King, yes. When King got what's his name? When that all happened to him, and then the cops got off. They had the riots out in Los Angeles.
Yep,
like everybody in all the major cities, people were rioting because the cops got off.
Right.
And we were in the very last leg of boot camp. We were just about to be sent off to our schools. And I remember our drill instructor, our senior drill instructor, walked in, and he had us all, take a knee, and then he told us what had happened, and we're like, "Oh, wow!" And they're going, "Yeah, it's nuts out there." And then he said they're about to activate the Marine Corps to go in to Los Angeles and take charge, and we're like, "What?" They go, "Yeah, well," they said the Army couldn't do it, so they're sending in the Marines.
Wow.
And we were like, "Holy crap, really?" Because the Gulf War had just that had just ended, and so now they're telling us we might have to go to Los Angeles. and we're like, that's crazy. And so like he was really serious about it. And he goes, some of you may be fighting your friends, your brothers, your cousins. He says sometimes that's the way it goes. And he goes, so you have to be mentally prepared to have to fight your fellow Americans. And we're like, what? This is nuts. And thankfully it didn't happen. Once they sent the Marines in, everyone's like, oh, okay, this is serious. We need to go home. So
Yeah.
shortly after the Marines were deployed into Los Angeles, all the looting and rioting pretty much subsided at that point, because everybody knows when the Marines come in, they mean business.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, I don't know. The Marines have this attitude thing. I think all branches do, but the Marines have this certain attitude that.
Well, again, it's
never
because we
leaves
were
them.
all trained to be riflemen. That's our first job. I mean, they beat that into your head. They go, first and foremost, you're a rifleman.
Mhm.
That's your first job. More, whether you were a cook, whether you're an office pogue, whether you were, a red patcher like myself, it didn't matter. At the end of the day, we are all riflemen. So that's the continuity. That's the unity between all of us. And so that's what keeps us hyper focused.
Mhm.
The few, the proud.
Very proud. Very proud.
Well, Granny, it's been about an hour, so I got to get rolling.
Yeah. Yes, it has. Oh my gosh, I was just so enjoying our talk and
No problem.
sharing and listening. I appreciate you coming on.
Do you have any other questions before I go?
No, but do you have anything that you would like to share with our listeners before you go?
Yeah, I would tell you. So I've been working with this gentleman, Drew Hernandez. He's a combat veteran online. Look him up. His handle is A Combat Veteran on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. He's got a lot of funny videos related to vet life. And I've been working with him off and on for the last year. And just keep on the lookout. I might be doing another show or two with him. Anyways, a really funny guy. If you want to, I'm promoting somebody else. I know that's silly, but the guy's doing a lot of great work for VFWs and the American Legions, because he does his shows in the American Legions and the VFWs, and he does a split with them to where they get a good chunk of the money so that they can do the things they need to for their locations. Because as we know, there's a lot of VFWs that are just in disarray, that are ready to fall apart, and they need a lot of money to upgrade.
Yes, they do. I worked for the American Legion Department of Oregon, and it is very difficult to keep up with things. Definitely, each unit.
Yeah, and they also gotta kind of adapt to the times too. I mean, they're still kind of doing things the old school way, and they if they want to get more people coming to them, and if they want money to start, crossing the threshold there, they're going to have to adapt, because this is a different generation and they're not attracted to the same things as the older generation. And if you want those new those new veterans coming in and spending time in there, then you got to do a few things that are a little bit different, because that space is the ultimate safe space for veterans to come and relax and tell their stories to each other.
It is, and you're so right. And that's why the writers program is so popular, is because they have recognized that they need to adapt to what the younger people are doing, not just going to and sitting at the bar drinking.
Right.
There's other things to do, and
other creative outlets.
Exactly.
Other than getting smashed every night.
You got it. So again, thank you so much. I know you didn't know me and I didn't know you, but that's one of the great things about veterans, is that we can just sit back, relax, and talk about things, but also give hope to others. And I'm really proud of you that you have stepped into this role and that you are helping our fellow veterans that are in pain, and giving them some joy, and possibly even stopping them from suicide
Yes.
and living another day. And so I'm
Oh, I do.
very proud of you.
I do want to plug something else out. Plug
Hmm.
something else. We so I have a company with a friend of mine. It's called Failed to Render. You can go to the website failedtorender.com. And what Failed to Render is, it's a virtual reality. It's a virtual reality entertainment company that we founded during the pandemic. And as we know, a lot of soldiers, a lot of Marines, a lot of vets were stuck on base and they couldn't leave and they couldn't do anything. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of people during that time, a lot of vets. But me and my partner, we created comedy shows in virtual reality. Now, if you don't understand what virtual reality is, it's not this. This is like streaming. This is a streaming video. This is
Right.
like closed circuit television. You know what I mean? But when we talk about VR, it's those the virtual reality headsets that you wear, and you go into a virtual world where you're an avatar. Now, we created comedy shows in virtual reality where you get to go to a live comedy show as your avatar. Now, I met a lot of veterans in there, and a lot of, like I said, it all started happening around that time where I started doing more things geared towards veterans. I met a lot of veterans in virtual reality where they were so appreciative of that we created these comedy shows where they can go and release and laugh while they were stuck on base during COVID. And so I made some really good friends that are veterans and who are thankful for what I've done, creating this comedy show with my business partner. And I've got to meet some of these people in person, and just to see them smile when they actually get to meet me, it was something I'd never experienced, and I'm glad that my company did that. So for those veterans who are stuck on base or overseas and they can't get out to a comedy show, they can go to Fail to Render, and we have comedy shows in Meta Horizons and VR chat, and you can look it up. And as long as you have a headset, you can go in and you can take part in these comedy shows, and you can watch them and laugh. Or if you get a bug up your butt, you can get on stage and try a virtual open mic. And I find that veterans have an easier time in virtual reality because they can be in a crowd without being in a crowd. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so it allows them to kind of venture into a crowd and kind of get over that PTSD of being in a big crowd. So I definitely recommend veterans going in and checking it out, or anybody else that's listening to this. You don't have to be a veteran to experience this, but I definitely recommend it for veterans. It allows you to kind of acclimate to a big crowd, to loud shows, and still have fun because you're in a crowd without being in a crowd.
That makes sense. It really does. And good for you for recognizing that, because I never would have thought about that.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever heard of it. So that's amazing. Yay.
All right.
You're
Well,
just
thank
doing
you
all
so much,
kinds of
Granny. My
stuff.
name is Big Al Gonzales. You can find me on Instagram at the Big Al Gonzales. And remember, it's an S at the end, not a Z. It's Gonzales. So remember, less is more. That's how I get people to remember. Less is more. Gonzales.
Okay,
Right.
cool. Peggy,
So,
do you
and
have
then you can
anything
find me
else?
on
Go ahead.
Facebook at Big Al Gonzales. You can find me on Twitter/X under Big Ass Comedy, and on TikTok, I believe I'm also Big Al Gonzales. You can find my video on YouTube. I have a 30-minute comedy special on YouTube under Big Al Gonzales, and I also have my comedy specials on Pandora and Amazon, also under Big Al Gonzales. So look me up, go find me, check my all my socials. You'll see when I'm in your town, and hopefully you can get a ticket, and we can all laugh together, and you can tell me your story.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it. When you come to Houston, I'll be there. Definitely. Unless
Awesome.
you come to Montgomery. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you
very much, Brandy.
Have a great night and be safe out there.
Awesome.
Take care, everyone. Night.
Bye-bye.